But I thought, like, where's the action stuff? Kind of like Wagner, like the German composer, and like hard brass and really hard kicking, and a little bit of Hans Zimmer pounding drums and all that. And then I remember I was writing a really crappy demo. I mean, the hard drive failed, or I don't even know where I started from, but I'm so happy that it's not available anymore.
It's so bad the computer died. Welcome to the Epic Score Podcast. I'm Gabe Shadid. I'm your host today, and my guest is an Epic Score composer, Alex Pfeffer. Alex is in Germany, and I've known him for a long time, and we've worked together on a number of albums, and I think one of his most interesting licenses was a piece of music that was licensed into the Pacific Rim trailer. That was a lot of fun. So welcome, Alex. How are you?
I'm fine. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's great. It's fun to do this. Personalizing the people that have worked within Epic Score is a really cool thing. And I'm excited to be talking to different composers and industry people and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm having a great time. I love doing it. Everybody always jokes around. I talk a lot. Well, I do talk a lot, and this gives me a platform to do it.
But same here, so probably this thing going to end up for like 3 hours. Hopefully not, but
right. Well, it's really cool. You actually have a really nice online presence already. I mean, look at your studio. Like, what I got in here? It's blue in here. You just see this from the. You shouldn't see the other stuff here in the room. I think it looks great.
But thanks.
It looks so curated and super pro. So anyway, Alex started his life as a guitarist, and then he started pushing into composing, and he's composed production music that was trailer music and all that kind of stuff, and he's scored games. And from there, he's worked his way into education, and he has a whole platform of mentoring and coaching people. And so Alex has had a really cool journey, and I want to dive in. And how did you do it? The theme, I've had several interviews with the podcast now, and the theme seems to be, how do you meet people, and how does that work into your career? In this world of where AI is becoming a big thing, computers and social media and some of that stuff is inherently sort of separated and impersonal. And a theme that's starting to sort of become a thread of this is the idea that personal connections are what make things happen. And, that's sort of that world of just blind resumes being sent out 1,000 at a time doesn't really net the desired result. And so I really enjoy learning about the paths that people take and the decisions that they made and the risks. One of yours was, that we'll get into, is traveling to another country to get get more education for yourself. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about, where did your music journey start?
Yeah, so basically I could start at the age of 14 something. I started to decide playing guitar because honestly, I was watching, MTV's Headbangers Ball back then, which was like a, probably remember that, like once a week. And then you seen like Steve Vai playing and Joe Satriani. And that was like, oh, I want to do that too. When I got my first guitar, I had private lessons. And then at roundabout fast forward at the age of 17, that's kind of like embarrassing, but I tell it anyway, because I got into a band. And this was more like a poser band. We just probably had one gig, and we just in our school back then. And then afterwards, the band broke up. But we probably had more photo albums of us doing, styling and looking like Poison and Mötley Crüe.
You guys had the marketing down.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then, probably more photo albums or more pictures than songs. Fast forward, kind of like at the age of 23, 24, I decided to go to LA, studying guitar, because it kind of like became serious at this point.
So you at 23, 24 went from Germany to Los Angeles just to study guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
What was the decision making there? What was the opportunity, or how did you even find out that you could do such a thing in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I clearly remember, because there was a music school in Germany, and there was a drummer back then that I met in a rock club, and people talked about him. He's like a really cool drummer. Sometimes I've seen him, and he was kind of like arrogant looking. It's like, I don't know what if I want to. It was really like this, because it's funny, when we met, he was thinking the same about me. So we were like these guys. But then at some point we decided to start a band together, and it was really funny because we were Dream Theater fans, so we listened to like It's a Gem, like all the old Dream Theater stuff. And at some point we decided, let's make music like that. With that band we had more live gigs than with a poser band before, and it was really more serious. And he was the guy who had lessons with a jazz fusion teacher, the drum teacher back then. And he said, like, what, there's a program in Los Angeles. We just have to go there together. And I was like the guy, can't do that much with guitar here in Germany. I was prepared as well, having private lessons on the same school then. And the guy prepared me to do sight reading, and got me into the music theory side of things, and prepared me really well. And then it was really like we just sat in the plane and went to Los Angeles and started studying music there.
And how long did you stay in LA?
It was just 1 year. It's a little bit disappointing, and you went to, how long did you live there? How long did you study music? Well, just a year. You would have, of course, stayed longer, but it was very intense. And I can clearly remember one of my teachers was Frank Gambale, and he was like saying, you will never play that much music in your life anymore than you will do here. And he was right until this point, even though became a professional musician composer. But I was practicing, or everybody was practicing and playing music so much during the stay. It was really intense. We had session workshops happening every day in school. There was like a professional drummer and a bass player coming in the afternoon, and in the morning we got a sheet, maybe some, from the real book, or some kind of like a piece of music, and we had to learn it throughout the day. And then in the afternoon we performed the track. So it was really a great experience. It wasn't just like theory, learning 7 modes or chord modulations. It was really like performing live and waiting for cues from the drummer and all of that stuff.
Wow. And so you go back to Germany after that?
Yeah.
And what did you pick up with there?
Yeah, so basically I was honestly thinking about staying in LA, but I felt like I kind of like missed home in that sense. And I just wanted to come back to Germany and see where I can go from there. And basically I got a call like a few weeks later when I came back, that a band wanted to, hire me as a guitar player, because that the area I'm coming from, there's like small towns, when there was a kind of like a sack of potatoes falling over at night. Everybody knows it. So
what was that sound last night?
Everybody knew the teachers I had. I mean, Bill Fowler, Jeff Paris, Joy Basu, Frank Gambale, like all of these professional, Linda Taylor, all these professional. We also had Joe Porcaro as a drum teacher, so we sometimes sneak in. It was like sitting with the dad of Toto basically playing drums. And that was really, really cool time. So anyway, I came back and I was hired by this band. And it was clear from the beginning it was like a rock pop project called Reinvented. And we rehearsed like crazy. We just had a really brilliant singer, songwriter, and we wrote really cool songs. I mean, he did. And then we brought it kind of like to what's possible, kind of like in the sense of Goo Goo Dolls was the band, something like this back then, this typical style. And then we got a record deal with BMG, with a sub-label actually. And then we were touring with, I mean, if you're, whoever listens or watches right now, if you're from Europe, you probably know bands like Raymond and Guano Apes and H-Blocks, for example. So we toured with these people, and it was really an amazing time. But during that time, it became kind of like obvious that I was more interested in, when we recorded our album, sitting in the studio and in front of the console and dealing with plugins and sample libraries or synth. That was more my thing. So that's when it swapped over to saying like...
So you're in this band, but you're sitting there going, I kind of like being in the studio.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, when I was at the studio, I remember the first sessions that we had when we recorded instruments. I was always just fascinated, like, by all the lights and the faders and everything. It's like, like a little boy No kidding. But I mean, the guy who was the recording engineer, I was always a guy asking a lot, always when I was like a little kid. And what is this doing? What is that doing? And he explained everything to me. And it was so fascinating. And he was so quiet and patient, and just. And then I came in as an assistant, even after the time of recording the album. I didn't even ask for money. I said, like, just can I be here?
Oh, wow.
And
So you're in the band, but you're asking if you could come and be like an intern assistant at a studio just for learning's sake, I'm assuming.
I didn't even ask to be an assistant, or I just said, like, can I come tomorrow? Would it be fine to help you with, cutting drums, or just, putting cables, or, asking more questions about the plugins? And obviously I was there for the recording time of the band, but then it swapped over. And then, hey, he called and said, like, hey, we have another project going with another band. Would you be able to just play a little bit of guitar, or, helping out with whatever it was, right? But then sometimes I was just driving there. It's like, hey, can I just be here with you, watching over your shoulder, and then checking out how you do, like, I don't know, EQ curves and all the editing. And he helped me a lot with all of that. And that sparked my interest in that entire process. And obviously it wasn't that much with using sample libraries. It was more like the engineering plugin world. But then while we recorded or went on with the recordings with the band, we also needed, like backing sounds. We didn't have a synth or a keyboard player. So we wanted to have some synth arrangements, a little bit of classical stuff going on, some drum loops. And that's basically was the point when I said, like, okay, we had a little room in the basement of our house, of my parents' house. And I had my little studio in there, which was basically a table, right? And a PC on it, and a chair. But
you got to start somewhere, man. You got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was kind of like my grandparents stored the marmalade in that room. So, and I said, like, can I just kick that stuff out? You don't need it anymore.
No more jam.
No more jam. Let me jam. Dad jokes.
Oh no. That's funny.
Yeah, that's how it started. And then I got into the world of string libraries, and then you sit there and you're just asking, hey, I know music theory, I know guitar, all that stuff, but I don't know how do I do a string arrangement? It's a completely different thing. And then brass and woodwinds, I don't even need to deal with woodwinds. And then there was all the challenges back then. Like, you had the staccato samples that sounded like machine gun effect. I just know it under that term.
That bad repetitive, the repetition sound, yeah.
Yeah, when there was no round robin stuff going on, and then no legatos or something. Right. So you really had to invest a lot of time to make that stuff sounding good.
And you actually started doing demos for sample libraries, right?
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, like, at some point I was spending time on all these forums, out there, you name them, and then at some point, I was thinking, okay, there is all these cool guys, these brilliant composers out there, and they always write music like they try to imitate some classical composer, and it always was like melancholic stuff. But I thought, like, where's the action stuff? Where's like the hard hitting drums and like the action orchestra, and also that, not really knowing the term back then, trailer music or epic music, cinematic music, but I felt like, where is that? I missed that completely. There must be some demo where it's like, kind of like Wagner, like the German composer, and like hard brass and really hard kicking, and a little bit of Hans Zimmer pounding drums and all that. And then I remember I was writing a really crappy demo. I mean, the hard drive failed, or I don't even know where I started from, but I'm so happy that it's not available anymore.
It's so bad the computer died.
Yeah. Definitely. The hard drive instantly thought, like, okay, man, you're so crappy. I just have to vanish or fade away. Just, lose my magnetic, whatever it is. Right.
That's funny.
No, but it was really, really bad. But then I sent it off to Doug Rogers back then, the CEO of East West Quantum Leap. Mm-hmm. And I said, like, hey, I listened to all of these cool demos and they're really brilliant, but where is like the action stuff? I'm really missing something like this. And he wrote me an email back saying Yeah, of course, write a demo. I will send you an NFR. So they sent me the NFR version, not for resale version, and then asked me to write 2 demos. And then people actually liked it that much and asking questions. I mean, you feel like somebody completely new, like stumbling into this industry. You don't know anything. I didn't even know how to write for orchestra or anything, but people liked what I did because I used that's like this stupid term, like, right? Use your ears when you just...
Right. You've been ear trained in essence. You hear these sounds, they're really cool sounds. You've heard film scores. You're probably imitating the film scores of, you mentioned Hans Zimmer or whoever it is, that's making the kind of the modern action score sound of the day. So you're, kind of pushing your boundaries. And I think you were doing some beta testing too, right?
I mean, I have to thank you that you got me into Waves in the beta testing program.
Yeah, I tested for Waves as well. Yeah, they're, really nice guys, and they make really great plugins. And
and back then, how we met actually, as far as I remember, there was BI control back then. I mean, everybody knows the forum.
A composer, that's a composer forum that composers can come in and hang out and ask questions and learn about products. And
back then, I remember when writing my first demos, Frederick Russ back then, I think, founded the forum, and he wanted to do a little interview with new composers. So I was like really happy, and and then I think fast forward a few weeks later, I think you wrote me or something, and that you heard a demo that you kind of like hopefully liked what you heard back then, and then that was how it started.
Yeah, I used to be on the forums quite a bit back then, and I used to listen to people's demos, and sometimes I would reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you interested in trying writing for Epic Score?" So
that was really a great opportunity back then. I mean, everybody should probably know that when you want to get into trader music, that there is a long gap from writing the first album until release, and then releasing your money with your performance rights organization. I mean, probably like I always name it like the 2 years gap from that you write something until it's released. And then, so I was pretty happy that I was doing video games music at this time. So I had no kind of like severe problems on building this. And besides that, I was still living in the basement of my parents.
Yeah, it takes a while. It just like you said, it takes a while from the moment you write, and then you don't know the library's schedule. I think every new person I ever worked with, I said, look, if you need to make money tomorrow, we can't work together, because that's just not how this works.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing where I see where you can make fast money in the trader music or production music industry would be that you're custom writing for something. When you just work with a company and they say, hey, we need something until yesterday. And you're like, oh, you're really struggling, and you plan to go out with friends on a Friday, and then we need this, we need this tomorrow morning or something like this. And then you sit home and write stuff. And I did that for not just very long, but it was something that I would never enjoy doing, because I am a big fan of having a weekend, just recharging the batteries, and not constantly sitting for like 20 hours in front of the screen and just, burning out after like 5 years or 10 years. And because even in this industry, you're quickly replaceable, right? If somebody's just like falling over, you have like 2 or 5 new people. Mm-hmm. And and then this custom stuff is like, sometimes you get a little bit too close to another composition. I mean, at a very specific time back then, I remember everybody wanted to have Batman by Hans Zimmer. It was always then you have to sometimes, not again. No, you want to really be careful to not copy another track. Yeah. Then most of the time it was 10 composers pitching against each other, and just one track was obviously possible. So it happened very often that you didn't make anything.
So how did you get into the world of scoring games? And do you want to say some of the games you've worked on?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it also happened on a forum back then. At the same time, basically, when I, after the band stuff, getting into sample libraries, there was like a German developer forum for video games, and it was all kind of mixed stuff. There were people talking about code, and there was like a category for each of these things that games need, or the graphic designers. So it was like a wild mix of producers and storytellers and also musicians and composers. And then back then, someone from Dynamedion, one of the CEOs back then, he released a track on the forum, hey, I wrote something new. I just want to show you. And I mean, it was released at a specific date. But I wrote a track that contained a middle part that sounded almost exactly like the main theme he used in his track. But there was no chance that he was listening to my track because it was just sitting on the hard drive. And then I sent it to him and he was like, wow, that's a funny coincidence. And by the way, the music is great. Let's call. And that was the time when I got into video games back then with Dynamedion. So I also had, besides that, I want to mention that because it's probably funny. I got a message from Mick Gordon back then. He wrote the music for Wolfenstein, which is like this shooter game. And he also did Doom, like the Doom game. It's like a really cool composer. And he created this absolutely amazing Doom sound that is, legendary. He just recorded 8-string, 9-string guitars, and he sampled chainsaws within the audio of the guitar. And
wow.
Kind of like, it's like really, if you ever have a chance and you don't know the music, just check out the Doom soundtrack from, I can't remember exactly, not the new one, the 2025 release, but the previous one. It's like a so unique sound. You probably heard a track or two of that style. But anyway, the thing is, like, he reached out to me and said, like, do you know anybody who can sing German? And I was like, yeah, I know a few singers. And I'm looking for somebody who can really sing like in a German rough voice. And I sent him a track of mine and said, like this. And it's like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I want.
That was your singing. That was your singing.
Yeah, right. It was like some crazy stuff. But then it happened that I started working with him on Wolfenstein on all 3 parts. So he hired me, guess what, to play the German evil guys from back then. Yeah, so that was like probably the biggest. I sadly didn't write any music, like actively composing instruments, but I helped him writing lyrics in German. And it was really funny because in the game, there is an alternative universe. And it's not the Beatles that are getting famous, but it's a German band. And they needed a singer for that. And it was kind of like propaganda music, German propaganda music and stuff. And they needed somebody who sounds really like you can listen to the tracks still up. I will send you a few links later on. But
I don't think that's going to be in a future Epic Score release. Sorry.
No, better not. Even if you would ask me, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, there was like really, just quickly talking about this, there was like a really, I think in the second part, where it was like a mission of one of the guys. You just have to sneak through a bar, and they needed a bar song. So we just wrote a track that is similar to kind of like the drinking songs that you sing in the Oktoberfest in Munich. And I came up with some cool lyrics. And later on, the game, Machine Games, who developed the Wolfenstein series, they recorded everyone from the team, singing phonetically what I was singing because they didn't understand German so they phonetically recreated what I was singing. And then the entire team is singing. And when you get to that pub and you hear like all of these people singing, it's just, entire team, including me, some drunken soldiers.
Did they make everybody drink a couple of beers before they sang it?
I don't know. I wasn't there at the session, but I knew for me that I was, probably getting paid the one time where I was faking a drunk guy. But yeah, that was probably the biggest reference in the video game world.
That's fun. So then as time moved on, you were doing production music, trailer music, you were doing stuff for games, you were doing some beta testing, and then your life seemed to progress towards education. How did you get into that?
I really love working, for production music, for video games and all that stuff. But I just wanted to have something that I can call my own. Because ironically, back then, and it was like a few months before COVID hit, I decided that I just wanted to build my own stuff. Something that I can sell, something where I'm not depending on someone else. Again, not because I don't like working for someone. I always love working in a team, collaborating with people. But I just wanted to build my own world domination program in that sense. So at this point, I thought I just wanted to dabble a little more into, because I was already creating my own patches, sound design stuff. I had a few, hardware synth and stuff. And then I started to create basically sample libraries. I mean, it was just like little stuff, nothing that got really like a hit or something, but it was just fun because I learned something before I became a composer, and that was basically being a layouter, which helped a lot, when you're sitting in a graphic design office and lots of stuff about font and placement and proportions and ratio and all that stuff. And so when I started creating my own sample libraries, I was also happy that I got a little bit back into the, let's say like the visual side of things. And then I thought like, hey, why don't you get into the educational side of things? And that happened like a few months before COVID, when I was watching a video, I can't remember exactly the guys, and he said something, if you're clever, with this raspy voice, if you're clever, you want to get into the world of education. You want to invest into education. He's talking like this. I listened to him saying that, and I thought like, hey, that's a good plan, because I always like to have like several opportunities happening, especially when, some stuff happens, the tracks getting rejected, projects getting rejected or canceled.
Epic Score is rejecting.
Yeah, right. Again and again and again. It's like,
that Gabe.
I have to do something about it. Yeah, and then I thought like, hey, why don't you take your experience? Because so far, I started around roughly like 2005. So I kind of like had 10, 13 something years of experience in that industry. And I thought like, why not passing this information on? And then I started doing a course about trailer music. I was thinking a little bit because I did like a motivational, health side of things course, but I fell on my face flat with that because honestly, nobody knew me in the industry that I would do that. If I would have a past of being 10 years of a yoga teacher, for example, or being a mindful teacher or something, I had a lot of experience, in all of these things because I was always like a health nerd in that sense of taking cold showers and breathing exercises. But it's kind of like I overestimated myself by saying, okay, I can do a course about this and just slam it into the internet and say like, okay, buy this. That didn't work. So I learned a lot about marketing, got into that world. How do you write your emails? How do you write, landing pages? What is the first sentence on that so people understand what's going on? And then the trailer course, the first one was basically like a big hit. So a lot of people purchased it when COVID struck basically, and all kinds of projects were canceled and people had to reorganize in their home studios. We are used to working from home.
Right.
I see it with a little bit of humor because everybody started complaining. It's like, I'm sitting alone at home. And I was like, where is that a problem?
So Epic Score started shipping its first music in 2006, and that's when I stopped being a sound mixer and doing Epic Score full time. And ever since that moment where I started working from my home with Epic Score, people always said to me, I don't understand your lifestyle. I don't get it. I don't know how you can make a deadline. There's a full kitchen, I don't know how, there's the television. I don't know how you get through the distractions. There's the dog, there's whatever. It was a constant thread. I don't understand how you do it. COVID happened, and all of those same people were like, I totally get your lifestyle. I'm never going back. It was like, whoa. Okay. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah. When you get used to it, it has its advantages.
I enjoy it, but it sure does require a certain amount of discipline because it is very easy to get distracted. There's no doubt, for sure. All right, so you start the education. Did you start with a certain thing in mind and it actually became that? Did you sort of start and it sort of grew into something else? How did it grow and how is it going?
Yeah, so basically the thing was with, obviously there is like a, curve of interest. If you do a course and then it sells well for a while, but if you're not having like gazillions of dollars to put that into, Facebook advertising, or you're not a specialist in how to do that, to feed it like continuously. And even if you would do that, every project has kind of like a decline curve. Nobody at some point buys it anymore. So you start doing the Black Friday stuff and, like discounts and stuff. So I think about, okay, I'm creating my next course. And then after a while, I really built like probably until now, probably like 10 to 11 courses.
Wow.
And at some point, I started working with a coach because I was feeling I was burning out in this. So I was not writing, like a composer sitting 20 hours in my studio and relaxing on the weekend. But I was kind of like burned out because you constantly had to create new courses, because when there is like this curve happening, so, it's happened again, you have to think of a new course. I never did courses to just like, okay, how can I make the quickest money possible or something. I always was convinced that this would be something that would be of worth for people. So I started, after the trader music course, I did a video games music course, how to write video games, because this is like a fascinating world on its own, because you not have to only know how to write music, but you have to understand that the player composes the music while they are playing the game, because you just write chunks of music. You have like a battle loop that is going on for like 1.5 minutes, or you have an intro and an outro or a layer on top, and you never hear the full track. I mean, of course, when you're composing it, you hear the full track, but then you have to split it up and you have to think in chunks. And this is the difficult stuff, because you always have to think in an interactive way, how to write your music. So I wanted to do this. And then also there's specific stuff involved with the video games industry, that how to read a brief, taking the opportunity and talk to the audio director, because that's why they therefore, or talking to the responsible people on the project, and then going from there, what the deals would be, what would be a good way to charge. I mean, if you look around until today, people don't know what to charge for, per minute video game music. Mm-hmm. So all of these things. And then at some point I had this coach, and he was like, you kind of like, you do so much, you have so many courses, you have so much footage and videos done. Why don't you use that and turn it into something that is like a live class, where you actively be there for people? Because I think the most valuable thing is that you do something that is personal, like live calls, meeting with people directly, one-on-one. And I stumbled into this basically. So I was revamping all of my courses into a single program that is basically my Audio Artist Rise program. And I help composers not just write music or giving them feedback on their music, preparing them for the video games or trader music world, production music world, but also how to kind of like design the demo reel so it sparks some attention. Because honestly, this is where I can brutally say like 9 out of 10 composers fail. They all send out SoundCloud links and write emails like, listen to my music. But yeah. I mean, the thing is like, if you use a subject line, just because it's my favorite example, if you want to get into the video games world and you write a subject line like, my music is that good, it would make Princess Peach forget about Mario. This is something which is kind of like so provoking and a little bit arrogant, but also funny. And this is an email that would get opened all the time, because somebody has to, what is going on? They know that it's about music, but it sparks some interest by opening this email, and you have to read it.
Epic Score gets a lot of demos. I imagine, yeah. A lot of it is not presented particularly well.
I mean, that's what I experience as well. So that people send out music, and he literally received some email from a guy saying like, but don't, put too much criticism on it, because I wrote it like 3 hours before I went out with my buddies. And I was like, why do you send that to me?
Why are you sending that?
I can imagine you receiving probably like hundreds of emails per month. You probably don't want to spend like more than 10, 15 seconds on swapping over emails. I mean,
yeah, I could go into this at some other time. I don't want to dwell on it overly, but Epic Score is a pretty specific thing. Our music has really been a pretty narrow niche pretty consistently. And I can't tell you how many, drums and bass and R&B demos and light acoustic alternate, whatever. And I'm like, I don't know, why are you sending me that demo? I don't know why.
Yeah, the first word, epic, should kind of like imply what is going on with the company. So,
I mean, there's not a lot of mystery about what is the idea behind what Epic Score is. And yeah, I get tons and tons of demos that have nothing to do with what we do. Anyway, we had an album that just released recently, Rise of Legends. That was a lot of fun working on that with you. We had fun recording Clara Sriracha.
Yeah, absolutely.
She did a great job. I thought there was really good, strong emotions in that album you did, and I had fun working on it with you.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you doing the mastering basically, and just guiding me all along, because
the mixing and mastering.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. but but I mean, that's what I like about it. As I said, I love working with people. So if you get an opportunity like this to get the chance of somebody else mixing and mastering your music, I would always take that, because especially when you know that the sound is great, I might honestly have to say this, because I mean, if you listen to all the albums of Epic Score that you listen over time, also from other brilliant composers, it's like always consistent, and this is what I honestly love about Epic Score.
Well, I mix and master everything to try to bring a single approach to it. I hope it works, but it's that trying to bring sort of a unified approach, so that the choices in the mixes and the loudness and, just how it's presented, and I can't compare it to anybody else's process, but it works for me. And so I keep going down that road.
It does for me too, honestly. I mean,
yeah, it's fun. No, it's
really great.
It's always fun to get somebody's tracks, and then, there's working with it and commenting on it and making changes. And then, sometimes I'm like, okay, I can change that myself, so I don't need the composer to go back and do something. I can make the alter. Sometimes like, no, this is just not working. And then I'm making mental notes. I'm listening to this thing like, okay, I'm going to want to approach this way, or, the intro really needs to be either longer or different or more patient. And I'm stripping stuff out, because it's like, okay, we got too busy too quick. Let's tease more. There's all these kinds of, ideas. But yeah, I had fun on that album with you, and, we'll do something else again soon. So that'll be fun too. And, it's fun putting it out there, for the audience, and people are very supportive and very kind, and so thankful for that. So even beyond the education, you've developed one more thing out there that's a technology base that I may actually end up using in this podcast world. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So basically the thing is, like, with this education thing, I do my best, with composers, but there are also composers who don't want to go down that route of saying like, okay, I don't want to consistently reaching out to companies, because I literally heard one story of somebody saying, I reached out to 5 companies and nobody hired me, so I became a taxi driver. Seriously, that was happening. And I was like, why didn't you contact like every day 5 companies for like a year or something? Because then this is like, I see that with my students, everybody who is like consistently reaching out every day and talking to people, and, sometimes doing some, I mean, I'm not saying write your music for free, but who is like willing to, present something without asking first for money, they all more or less have success. They all make it in the industry. But there are composers who don't want to put that, but they have regular projects or some, kind of like, let's say, like a little bit of budget available. And then at some point I thought, okay, I just want to put something on top and saying, I can do a done for you service where I basically take care of all the outreach to people, setting up a well working and an effective demo reel that hooks kind of like people where they interested in that, which is not a SoundCloud link.
Specifically with SoundCloud, I don't have a paid SoundCloud account. If you have an only free account on SoundCloud, they make you listen to ads. So then somebody sends a demo, and if I want to listen to it, I have to listen to like a minute of ads before I can even listen to the piece of music. And sometimes it's like, no, I'm not listening to, a minute of ads. Like, I honestly have 1,000 demos in my inbox right now. I'm not kidding. There's 1,000 demos in my inbox. I mean, if I'm in that mode of listening to a few demos at a time, like, you do it in batches or whatever. I don't know how anybody else does it, but I'll do it in batches at time, just kind of see what's out there one way or another. But then, you get linked to something, and then you got to listen to, like I say, a minute of ads, and you're like, okay, this is not efficient. This platform you're building, from the conversations I've had with you, it's really relying on AI to make things really efficient and move quickly, which is interesting. How afraid are you of AI in the music world, in the actual music world?
Let me put it like that. Whenever I tried to let Suno or the Udio or whatever they called, I don't even, whenever I try to get some decent written production music track, it always failed. It delivered kind of like the sound quality sometimes. Sometimes you hear like fractions of John Williams and Harry Gregson Williams, and then suddenly it's Hans Zimmer, and just switching back and forth between all kinds of composers, but there is no consistency. And this is what I think, building the tension and the excitement, especially in the trailer music world. This is the most important, to tell a story with your music that keeps people interested, because you're basically the audible marketing unit or something that is trying to sell a movie or a TV show. And at some point, I think, who knows, like in 5 or 10 years, it may happen that AI writes music like this. But even then, and I try to review, I want to clarify that to everyone. I use to some extent, I use AI when it comes to doing a picture for a social media post, or a header of a demo reel, or just taking a profile picture and say like, AI, put it into kind of like a cyber world or adventure world, and you appear as a Viking, which makes it more appealing to video game companies that are focusing on fantasy. So why not presenting yourself as the characters you're writing the music for? But I don't like I don't even use like all of these internal features in digital audio workstations, like chord tracks or something like this, or these arrangement features. I just like to write my music, and that's it. Yeah. And then, but AI using for replacing creativity, I think that's wrong. I mean, this is for people who quickly want to come up with writing a track for the girlfriend. Hey, I still love you, or something that.
The Insta love song.
Yeah. I didn't mean to hurt you, or something like this, right?
Is that in German or English?
I would even go a step further by saying, if there is a graphic guy, a designer, or a 3D mapper, or kind of like a storyteller or something would use AI for music, I wouldn't have a problem for that when that person is presenting his project, for example, on social media. If that person's just like saying, hey, I'm writing a book currently and there's some AI music in the background, I mean, that person wouldn't obviously license a track for like $1,500, to just have like this one social media post. So I would be completely fine with that. I see the danger is when companies start to replace artists.
Yeah, I would be curious to hear what the audience has to say about how much do they care, if epic style music was just being cranked out by a computer in 10 seconds. Would they enjoy it as much or feel the attachment? I mean, part of this podcast, the point of it is trying to start building a community. Again, I feel like I'm going backwards a little bit, and I'm not trying to be backwards. I feel like I'm swimming upstream a little bit, like everybody's going down the road of AI, and I designed an entire personal fitness plan and had a whole recipe for Thanksgiving, right. and I got a whole mortgage schedule to buy a house, and I did it all in 5 minutes with AI, and I don't need any other people and any other services anymore. And it's like, again, I'm talking about that personal connection. I like working with people. I like working with talented composers that have their own sound and bring their own creativity. I enjoy that. So I'm curious if the audience, do they care? Comment. Let us know. I'm really curious.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I've seen that advertising of the Suno CEO or something where he said like, people don't want to spend time writing music anyway. So now you have the opportunity, something like really, whereas like, what? This is like my entire life was dedicated to music mostly. I just enjoyed playing guitar. I mean, I even traveled to Los Angeles to study music and paid like a load of money, like to just play this instrument better, and now you have like AI replacing that. But I think it's always important. It's always who, not how. It's always like, if somebody says like, oh, but who wants to have me in the trailer music industry, or who wants me to have writing music for a video game or doing a course about whatever, it's not about the product itself. It's about the person who's behind that. And this is what people love. And there is a fan base in trailer music. We all know that. I mean, and people are fans of this composer and that composer.
I hope so. I hope so, for sure.
Yes.
You know, a sort of parallel story that I can imagine is making another industry super nervous. Guess Jeans, the brand Guess, Guess Jeans. I believe it was Vogue magazine did their first ad with an AI generated model. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is the world of being a supermodel over all of a sudden? Like, you work out, you diet, you probably had to be 6 feet tall or whatever, 2 meters tall, and you travel to Europe and you're on these crazy shoots and you have to look glamorous all the time. And you put all those years of work into it. And then, somebody just boop, boop AI model. Like
I am,
Yeah, that's just frightening to me. I mean, this is why there's, understandably, a lot of fear out there. And so, I don't know where it's going, but
I always try to imagine the worst scenario that could happen. For example, when it comes to this AI. So let's assume at some point, like 10 years from now, there are like 10 different Netflix services offering you, I don't know, just a prompt window. And you say, like, I want to see John Wick 5, in a rubber suit, in a pink one. And he's just
wow. So you're saying a live generated film just off a prompt.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I want to see what would have been Terminator 3 really based off of Terminator 2 instead of whatever they made Terminator 3.
Yeah, right. Are they talking Bavarian or something like this, right? Well, everybody talks like Schwarzenegger.
He's already an Austrian robot.
Get out now. Yeah, so all that stuff. I mean, that would be funny.
Get to the chopper.
But I think everybody would be really fed up with seeing something like this. Or, imagine like John Wick with Schwarzenegger, like accent, and then there's some scenes. And, upgrades. I don't know. I can't do that, But at some point, I think like people would be fed up if you have like 10 Netflix stations or identical services, and you can generate your own movies. I mean, you at some point, you probably stop enjoying it, because there is nothing. It kind of like becomes boring because you can see everything. Do Lord of the Rings, but just like in a fantasy, in a science fiction world. And everybody has weird names and they're walking backwards or whatever and have their nose on the back or whatever it is. Right. You can
just
come up.
Right. Just doing it because you can, it's.
And then at some point, where is your, I mean, if you know about dopamine levels and how satisfactory something is, and then you're getting like into this, like that when you're on world tour, you're like a pop artist and you get home into your own four walls, you have like a dopamine drop that is like terrible.
Yeah.
And then I think the same happens when you watch movies like this, that you have like this dopamine kick because you try out everything that is possible. But at some point you say like, no, I don't know. And then you start appreciating maybe a life, like an acoustic guitar player sitting in the park and playing an instrument. And I think I would lean a little bit out of the window and saying like in 15 years from now, street musicians could be among the highest grossing artists.
Right.
They're just sitting on the street playing.
There was a Harvard study a number of months back where they were looking at the brain activity of somebody who's just started using AI. And there's a spike in brain activity because there's like, oh my gosh, it can do this. Oh my gosh, it can do that. But what happened was, as time went on, and the person started sort of turning more thought processes over to the AI, the human's brain activity ultimately declined because they weren't being forced to problem solve as much. They were turning some of that over to the AI. They weren't having to be as creative. It's one of these things. If it's a tool, that's fine. If you just let it replace you, not so fine, I think. So, Epic Score's audience, I believe, skews younger. That's what I've seen in some of the data from, the people that stream our music. And these are people who have to make decisions about their career. Can they get into a creative career? Is AI just going to take it all over? The thing I've been saying to people in these interviews is, and sort of the thought that's been coming out is that, these things have always been hard and things always got in your way. The personal connections, it's the thing that I think it's going to get us through. Well, thank you so much for this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you.
I've enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.